So, as we approach the 2026 NFL offseason, I asked you guys on my community tab, give me a prediction for your favorite team this offseason. And I'm going to be reacting to these today, letting you know if I agree with these predictions or disagree. They could be a draft pick, a trade, a cut, a signing. And if you want to be part of one of the next one of these, make sure you are subscribed so you'll know when I post on the community tab. I didn't get any predictions for 5 teams, so I'll be giving you guys my prediction for those 5 teams as well. And we're going to start off with the 49ers. This one comes from Ice Trade Dubs. He says that the San Francisco 49ers will sign Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens and Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts. They bring back Deebo Samuel. They draft Caleb Lomu in the first round from Utah and have a top 5 offense next season. Now, this is definitely some wishful thinking from this 49ers fan this offseason. I got a lot of comments from you guys that your favorite team is going to sign Tyler Linderbaum or George Pickens or a lot of these players. Only one team can sign Tyler Linderbaum, and I already feel like you're playing behind here because I think the Ravens probably have the best chance to bring back Tyler Linderbaum. He was drafted there. He's only played there. I know John Harbaugh is now coaching the New York Giants, but I don't think there's like maybe that connection there. I mean, maybe he does leave the Ravens and goes to the New York Giants. I think it would take a lot for the 49ers to pry away Tyler Linderbaum from the Giants or from the Baltimore Ravens, but you never know. Anything can happen. Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey in a free agent meeting with John Lynch can really convince him otherwise. They have roughly around $42 million in cap space this offseason. I could definitely see them bringing back Deebo Samuel. I feel like Kyle Shanahan appreciates the guys that he already knows everything about and have already utilized in the past. So I think Deebo Samuel can come back. Brandon Ayuk is most likely gone as well, so they definitely need just a depth piece. And I think Deebo can sign a nice one-year deal, reunite with McCaffrey and George Kittle. I don't think they're going to get Alec Pierce. I feel like Alec Pierce is going to get a lot of money on the open market. I could think he could go back to the Indianapolis Colts, but the Raiders, the Titans, the Chargers, Jets, Commanders have a lot more money to offer Alec Pierce than the 49ers. I could definitely see them drafting Caleb Lomu as well, as he's projected to go a little bit later in the first round of the NFL draft. Right now, he's kind of consensusly mocked around pick 29, which would be on the board for the 49ers, who are picking 27th. And after Maya Noah and Spencer Fanow, it does feel like Caleb Lomu would be the next option, and San Francisco should definitely invest in the offensive line this offseason. So I agree with the Caleb Lomu. I agree with the Deebo Samuel. I disagree. I don't think they end up with Tyler Linderbaum or Alec Pierce. Jay mentions here for the Chicago Bears that they are going to draft Caden McDonald. And I like this a ton for the Chicago Bears. And I think this could definitely be who they select on the night of the 2026 NFL draft with the 25th overall pick to take McDonald, the interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State, as they were not able to really generate too much pass rush. And I feel like they should get younger on the interior defensive line as well. Last offseason, the Bears added to the defensive line, who they already had Montez Sweat on it. They added guys like Deo Dangbo. They added Grady Jarrett as well. Shamar Turner was a rookie that didn't really give them too much last year. And I think Caden McDonald could definitely be a difference maker. I would love Caleb Banks for them as well, who was a standout from the Senior Bowl as the interior defensive lineman from Florida. Might go a little bit higher than where the Bears are picking at 25, but I think that should be a position group of need this offseason for Chicago. Upgrade that interior defensive line. Crockett mentions here for the Cincinnati Bengals that they're going to use their franchise tag on Trey Hendrickson because they still can't negotiate a contract. And I disagree here with Crockett. I think Trey Hendrickson is as good as gone. They're not going to work out any type of deal this offseason, and he's going to be on a different team next year either way. The Bengals can technically use their franchise tag on Trey Hendrickson, but I feel like that would just be a slap in the face to him. And maybe there is a franchise tag in trade, like that can definitely open up some possibilities this offseason. But I feel like teams like the San Francisco 49ers, the Washington Commanders, the Los Angeles Chargers, maybe the Las Vegas Raiders and the Tennessee Titans are going to try to use their abundance of cap space for Trey Hendrickson. What about the Rams, who have cap space as well? They may try to target the secondary throughout the draft. What if they give a bunch of money to Trey Hendrickson as well this offseason? It is definitely a possibility. So I just think that we are going to not see Cincinnati franchise tag Trey Hendrickson, and they're going to look externally and throughout the draft to update that defensive line. Maybe they get a year 3 Miles Murphy breakout. Maybe we'll get a year 4 Miles Murphy breakout, or maybe we actually see Shamar Stewart be healthy throughout the 2026 season. Next up comes from 11 here, and he mentions that the Bills actually don't trade for a top 30 receiver or draft a wide receiver in the first round. And I could definitely see this. I mean, AJ Brown is going to cost a lot, and who even knows if the Philadelphia Eagles are actually going to trade away AJ Brown. The Bills do not have that much money to work with this offseason. Actually going into free agency, they have about -7 to -11 million dollars in cap space. Now, the cap can be finagled a little bit. The cap's not really all that real in the NFL, so they can maybe end up with a Deebo Samuel Alec Pierce would be really cool, but they would really have to move the books to go out and get Alec Pierce or somebody like that. And Alec Pierce, you could say, is a top 30 receiver. I don't know if Debo would be one next year. I don't think they're really going to be in the Romeo Doubs market or the Wan'Dale Robinson. And these are top or fringe top 30 guys in the league. And when you're looking at the first round wide receivers, you obviously are going to have Mekhi Lemon, Cardinal Tate, and Jordan Tyson all off the board when the Buffalo Bills are selecting at 26. What if Denzel Boston is also on the board? I mean, plenty of teams ahead of Buffalo, like Pittsburgh, like Cleveland, and Philadelphia could select Denzel Boston. So are they going to take Casey Conception in the first round? Because if not, they may look into round 2. It's a deeper wide receiver class. Maybe Chris Bell falls in this class. Maybe Zachariah Branch from Georgia or Chris Brazel falls to them in the second round, and that's their big addition. And they look at one of those guys as an upgrade over Keon Coleman next year, or Brandon Cooks, who they had to give viable targets to in the divisional round. I could definitely see this from Brandon Beane, because I don't know if they're going to be super aggressive in the wide receiver department, even though they should be. Ball Knowledge Prod says that the Denver Broncos spend big and pick up somebody like Devin Lloyd or Breece Hall. And I feel like the Broncos definitely need to add some type of offensive playmaker this offseason. They have $28 million in cap space. They have Bo Nix, a viable starting quarterback, still under his rookie deal. And this team was just in the AFC Championship game, and who knows, they could have went to the Super Bowl or won the Super Bowl if Bo Nix didn't get hurt. I like their wide receiver options, but I do think there is maybe some room to upgrade. Cortland Sutton is a fine wide receiver one, but how many more years can you trust him as a wide receiver one? Are they going to get a breakout season as like somebody that emerges as a wide receiver one next year, and maybe a Pat Bryant or a Marvin Mims or a Troy Franklin or one of those guys? I would love Alec Pierce on this team, and with $28 million in cap space, they could definitely try to make it work as well, because I think he'd be a great deep ball threat for Bo Nix next year. Or maybe they do look at somebody that can split carries with RJ Harvey, as J.K. Dobbins was a fine one-year guy, and maybe they go that route as well. There's plenty of running back free agents that could get a one-year deal that we saw get one-year deals last year and exceed that value. Rico Dowdle, Javonte Williams, probably not going back to Denver, Kenneth Gainwell, or somebody like that, and maybe they take a one-year deal on a Raheem Mostert or Kareem Hunt or Jeremy McNichols or somebody like that, and then they can allocate that money somewhere else, because they do have money to go out and get somebody like Devin Lloyd, who would be an upgrade for their linebackers. They do have Dre Greenlaw, though, and Alex Singleton, so you're really trying to spend money for that front seven. I wouldn't hate the idea, instead of going after Devin Lloyd, you bring back John Franklin Myers, but he's going to cost a lot of money in free agency, and they might get outbid for him a little bit. I do think Denver is going to make a big splash. They signed Hufanga last offseason and Dre Greenlaw as well. I wouldn't hate the idea of getting maybe another guy in the secondary. I just hope Janae Barron is going to step up next year, because maybe they do move on from somebody like a Riley Moss. So nobody gave me anything for the Cleveland Browns here. So I do think this offseason is going to be fascinating for Cleveland, because honestly, my prediction for them this offseason, their quarterback room next year is going to most likely be what it is now. Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel. They're obviously not going to take a quarterback at number 6. I would be shocked if Ty Simpson ended up going there. Maybe they do end up with somebody like a Kirk Cousins. Maybe Derek Carr comes out of retirement to the Cleveland Browns or somebody like that. But I think they're going to invest in the offensive line this offseason. I think they're going to target Spencer Fano or Francis Maianoa, who's ever on the board with the 6th overall pick. Maybe they land a receiver as well. But I think they're just going to view this year as a bridge year. It's the last year of the Deshaun Watson contract. I just think that it's going to be an underwhelming week 1 quarterback room for the Cleveland Browns. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they take a big, exciting swing this offseason, and next year isn't just kind of like a punt year in Todd Monken's first year as the head coach. But can I trust Angie Berry? Can I trust the Haslam family? Right now, I can't. Kurt mentions here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't think this will happen, but it would be nice if the Bucs moved Kalijah Kancey to the edge and double up on defensive tackle by drafting Peter Woods and trading up to the 20s if Caleb Banks is still available. Now, right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are picking at 15, and honestly, I think you might have it reversed a little bit. I think there's a possibility that Caleb Banks goes ahead of Peter Woods in this upcoming draft, so the Buccaneers would have to trade up a little bit more than 20 spots to maybe land both of those guys. You don't really see teams trade up back into the first round for interior defensive linemen, although that would be a beefy defensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if you were able to move Kalijah Kancey, who was banged up and missed a lot of time in the 2025 season, to the defensive end spot. Hassan Reddick didn't really work out too much for them. I just think they really need to target some type of off-ball linebacker this offseason. I would love for them to get Sonny Styles. I don't know if he's going to be there at 15. There's a real chance he is off the board. So would they target CJ Allen out of Georgia? Or are they going to look for Devin Lloyd, who I talked about earlier with the Denver Broncos in free agency? Or are they going to look at a Caden Ellis, who's a free agent from their division rival, Atlanta Falcons? I think all of those are possibilities. The Buccaneers do have a little bit of cap space. They have $23 million. That's actually not even a little. That's a decent amount. But they do also have to bring back Mike Evans. So I wonder how they're going to add to that defensive side of the field, because this could be Todd Bowles' last year as the head coach. They definitely need to do something. Luke mentions here for the Arizona Cardinals that they are going to release Kyler Murray. Now, this is definitely a fascinating prediction because they do have a new head coach in Mike LaFleur, the younger brother of Matt LaFleur. Kyler Murray back in 2022 signed a 5-year extension worth $230 million. A lot of people thought that was way too much money at the time, and he's still under that deal. This contract basically has 2 more years, including the 2026 season, so they would definitely take some type of hit if they were going to cut Kyler Murray. Kyler has a $52 million cap hit in 2026. He's guaranteed $36.8 million regardless of what happens, but if he's on the team's roster past the first week of the new league year, which begins on March 11th, it's coming up, he is guaranteed an extra $20 million going into next season. So maybe we see Arizona make a decision before that March 11th deadline. If Arizona decides to cut him, the team will accrue $54.7 million in dead cap per over the cap. If he gets cut after June 1st, that would knock that number down a little bit to $47.5 million in dead money, while a trade would greatly diminish Arizona's dead money number, $17.9 million pre-June 1st, $10.7 million post-June 1st. And Ian Rappaport also said that the best case scenario for Kyler Murray is becoming a free agent and choosing his destination. So if he doesn't get along with Mike LaFleur, they don't see eye to eye, yeah, Kyler Murray could be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, who I talked about, might not have that exciting of a room next year. Could the Pittsburgh Steelers go after Kyler Murray, and Mike McCarthy could try to revitalize his career? Definitely possibilities. I thought there was a chance Kyler was going to be back in Arizona, and it looks like he's not going to be. I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback at number 3, so I'm fascinated to see who the quarterback is for the Arizona Cardinals next season. Jittery mentions here for the Los Angeles Chargers, they finally go all in as opposed to the past 2 hardball years, spending that number 3 cap space spending on big names to fill out the offense for Mike McDaniel. And I would love to see the Chargers use this $83 million, because you have Joe Alt, who's going to make $30+ million one day under a rookie contract. You have a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the field under a rookie contract as well. Marion Hampton is under a cheap contract. Vad McConkey's barely making nothing right now. So would they go after an Alec Pearson free agency? Could they somehow get George Pickens from the Dallas Cowboys? Probably not. But could they go out and maybe improve that interior offensive line? Could they convince Elijah Vera Tucker to maybe leave the Jets, come over there to the Chargers? Could they get Tyler Linderbaum, and one Harbaugh steals a former Harbaugh's player in Linderbaum to Los Angeles? I would love those ideas as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they added a notable name in the running back department. Maybe it's in the draft just to have somebody that splits carries a little bit with a Marion Hampton. Could be a change of pace guy. It's something like McDaniel did in Miami with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. He liked Alec Gordon at times last year as well, even though like Achane became that bell cow. And maybe that ends up being or Marion Hampton. Maybe this team goes after a David Njoku or a Kyle Pitts in free agency. I agree though with Jittery. I think they make some type of splash on the offensive side of the field. But it's nice for them too, because they have both their tackles figured out and they have their franchise quarterback, basically the 2 most important positions on the offense. Chiefs D mentions here that the Chiefs end up trading Trent McDuffie to the Los Angeles Rams for pick 29 in the NFL draft and the Rams 3rd rounder next year, but they don't keep pick 29. They move up or down in the draft. And I feel like we're definitely heading towards a path where Trent McDuffie ends up getting traded this offseason. I feel like a lot of Chiefs fans want this to happen as well. Trent McDuffie has been with the Kansas City Chiefs since the 2022 draft. He was a 1st rounder, 21st overall, and he helped them win 2 Super Bowls in 2022 and in 2023 against the Eagles and 49ers. Trent McDuffie has definitely been around a top 10 cornerback in the league for the last few seasons. He was an all-pro first team member in 2023, all-pro second team in 2024, diminished a little bit here in 2025, but everybody kind of had a down year in Kansas City, and I could definitely see them trade away Trent McDuffie. But Christian Fulton and Jalen Watson are both free agents for the Chiefs. Who's going to be in their secondary next year outside of No Williams? Maybe they're going to find some other guys that are going to step up as well, internally or externally. But it does feel like that is a match made in heaven. Trent McDuffie for a 1st round pick for the Rams, whose like major hole is the secondary. And if you could trade the 29th overall pick for an all-pro secondary guy, you take that. And can you also keep the 13th pick in the draft from the Falcons? Most likely. And they could double up. What if they drafted Jamal McCoy and then they added Trent McDuffie? That'd be amazing for them. As for Kansas City, that would net them 2 1st round picks. I would love if they ended up with like a David Bailey at number 9. Not sure how realistic that's going to be. Or maybe Brett Veach just wants to move on from Trent McDuffie. And then at number 9, he could take a Mansour Delane or Jamal McCoy or whoever he views as the CB1 in this draft. Maybe they're a Caleb Downs team. Who knows? I wouldn't mind them getting the 29th 29th pick because they can maybe add another offensive lineman, defensive lineman, another guy in the secondary, or a wide receiver. All are possibilities. And I think it could make sense for both teams. Stacey mentions here for the Indianapolis Colts that they are going to sign Trey Hendrickson to help Laiatu Latu using their draft picks for something else. So yeah, the Indianapolis Colts do not own a first round pick in this year's draft or next year's draft from the Sauce Gardner trade. So the first pick they're going to have in the 2026 draft is going to be 47th overall. Not sure if they're going to land one of the top tier edge rushers in this draft, but maybe they can get a tier 2 guy. Maybe it's a Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, a Zion Young out of Mizzou, if he actually does fall that far in the draft. But there's a chance those guys are off the board and they can look to maybe improve the offensive line. Now, the Colts don't have a ton of cap space. They do have $35 million, but I say they don't have a ton because they got to sign Daniel Jones. They got to sign Alec Pierce. Both are free agents as well. And maybe Alec Pierce is gone, but what is Daniel Jones's contract going to look like? Is he going to get the tag and account for $47 million against your cap? Is he going to sign a 3-year deal? I love the idea of Trey Hendrickson in Indianapolis. We were mocking this back at the trade deadline before they went out and got Sauce Gardner because we thought they could make maybe a win now move with the way Daniel Jones is playing. I could see this. I mean, Laiatu Latu is great and he definitely needs some help on that defensive line. I just don't know if they're going to have enough financial flexibility to go out and get Trey Hendrickson. Maybe I'm wrong. Jared Fry mentions here for the Washington Commanders, they signed Brandon Ayuk. Now, this would be kind of hilarious too because they traded for Deebo Samuel last offseason, so maybe they would go out and get Brandon Ayuk, another former San Francisco 49ers receiver who's not going to cost you any draft capital in a trade. Brandon Ayuk is most likely getting waived here from the San Francisco 49ers after signing a massive contract extension with them ahead of the 2024 season. He tears his ACL 7 games in and doesn't play a single snap in 2025. I have no idea if Brandon Ayuk is done with football. Will he be back playing for any team next year? And if he is, the Commanders do make some sense, right? Adam Peters was in that front office that helped draft Brandon Ayuk back in the 2020 draft. Ayuk might not cost a lot, and they need another playmaker with Terry McLaurin out there. So we mentioned it earlier, like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk can maybe do a swap this offseason, and Deebo could go back to Santa Clara. I could see this 100%. I would like for Washington to get a little bit younger. I know Brandon Ayuk is still only 27 years old. Like, he's not super old, but we haven't seen him catch a pass since October of 2024. So much has changed. Old Bean mentions here for the Dallas Cowboys that they're going to sign George Pickens to a massive contract just under CeeDee Lamb's. They restructure a lot of contracts as well, freeing up tons of cap space. In free agency, they signed Jalen Phillips and Tyler Linderbaum, moving Cooper Beebe to guard while moving Tyler Smith to right tackle. They also signed Devin Lloyd in the draft. They select Sonny Styles and trade the 20th pick for a later first and a round 2 pick. Now, this is definitely wishful thinking from this Cowboys fan this offseason. I do think they are going to sign George Pickens to a massive contract. Like he mentioned, they could restructure some deals and make George Pickens one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. Going into next year's season, Jamar Chase is making $40 million. Justin Jefferson is making $35 million. CeeDee Lamb is making $34 million. So would they give George Pickens $33 million, basically $1,000 more than what DK Metcalf is making at $32.9 million with the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's a possibility. I could also see them maybe landing Jalen Phillips in free agency. I mean, the Cowboys will have a little bit of financial wiggle room this offseason with some restructures, but they're really going to take a hit if they give George Pickens a massive contract. So I wonder, would they see themselves as maybe becoming the Bengals 2.0, the Bengals of the NFC? Let's sell high on George Pickens. Could we tag and trade him for a first-round pick or a second-rounder, and we can now use that cap space that we free up for a Jalen Phillips? Could they actually land a Tyler Linderbaum from the Baltimore Ravens? Devin Lloyd would be great as well, and then you don't have to maybe draft Sonny Styles in the NFL draft, or you could draft them both and have 2 great off-ball linebackers, or maybe you can use that 12th overall pick on a Mekhi Lemon, basically the George Pickens replacement, but you get a lot cheaper. It's a possibility. The Cowboys have the 12th overall pick and also the 20th overall pick. I wouldn't hate if they just used both those picks on the defensive side of the field. I don't think they're going to be able to pull all this off, Linderbaum, Phillips, and pay George Pickens and sign Devin Lloyd. I think you're going to have to sacrifice something there. This person mentions here for the Miami Dolphins, Malik Willis to Miami, and then a subsequential Tua Tagovailoa trade. Yeah, I think Malik Willis to the Miami Dolphins makes a ton of sense. He reunites with his old defensive coordinator in Jeff Hafley from the Green Bay Packers. I talked about that in my free agency kind of preview video I made last on the channel. I think Malik Willis can reunite with John Eric Sullivan as well, who I guess was in that front office to go out and pick up Malik Willis from the Tennessee Titans when he got let go. I don't know where Tua is going to get traded because it does feel like Tua is going to get traded. They're going to take a massive cap hit when they trade Tua. They might have to attach some type of draft capital if they want to fully get off that deal as well. And what team is realistically taking on that Tua contract? The Cleveland Browns, do they really want to run that next year? I don't really know if that's a possibility right now. The Raiders just take on Tua's contract for a free second rounder or something like that, and then he backs up Fernando Mendoza next year. I mean, the Titans could absorb Tua's contract with cap space, but would they get a good enough draft pick to do so? And he would obviously back up Cam Ward. The Jets, could they go for Tua? He could actually start for them next year, and they could maybe get some type of draft capital as well. I'm hoping not to my Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that's going to be one of the more fascinating storylines this offseason, but maybe no team really wants to take on Tua's contract, and maybe Miami's not really willing to give up a day 2 pick or anything like that to get off that deal. So he might just be like Malik Willis's backup next year. B-Spence mentions that the Eagles take a Lane Johnson replacement. Now, easier said than done, right? That 2013 class did not age the best, but you know what did age well? Lane Johnson, who was probably the best player from that class. He went 4th overall. Some of the guys around him, Eric Fisher, fine career, Luke Jokel, Deion Jordan, Ezekiel Ansah, Barkevius Mingo, Jonathan Cooper, Tavon Austin, D. Milliner, and Chance Warmack. Not many hits there in the first round, not many hits there in the top 10, but yeah, Lane Johnson was an absolute hit. 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro member, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Eagles back in 2017 and 2024. Jeff Stoutland, the much respected offensive line coach in Philadelphia, retired, and people were saying that Lane Johnson, who's dealt with a lot of injuries over the last 2 years, could look at retirement as well. He is 35 years old. This would be a massive blow to the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't really have a lot of cap space either. They have about $20 million, but they got to worry about financial flexibility in the long term with all these void years they pushed out. The Eagles have the 23rd overall pick in the draft. That's probably around the range of somebody like a Caden Proctor from Alabama, a Kel Womu from Utah. Those could definitely be the Lane Johnson replacements for the long term. They better hope that like Landon Dickerson doesn't retire either, because that's apparently been rumored, or Jordan Mailata in a few years, because then this offensive line really might crumble. This person mentions here for the Atlanta Falcons that they're going to bring in somebody to compete for the QB1, and they take the spot for Michael Penix. Now, unfortunately for the Atlanta Falcons, they do not own a first-round pick in this draft. They traded their first-round pick for James Pierce Jr., who might not even be available for them at the start of next year's season. Who knows what that suspension is going to look like? So the Atlanta Falcons do own their second-round pick in this draft. It's in at pick 48, so there's definitely some quarterbacks on the board, but this team has some holes. Are you going to take Ty Simpson, who probably won't be there? Trinidad Chambliss is going back to school. Are you going to take Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, Sawyer Robertson, one of those guys in the second round? I highly doubt it. So they look at the trade market this offseason. They're most likely going to cut Kirk Cousins as well. They could bring in a veteran. Could they bring in Jimmy Garoppolo? Is there somebody that wants to play under Kevin Stefanski next year that could just be a viable veteran quarterback that can compete with Michael Penix going forward? Maybe Kevin Stefanski reunites with Joe Flacco. I truly have no idea, because you can't roll into next year with just Michael Penix. In my opinion, they actually got better quarterback play with Kirk Cousins down the stretch of the season than Michael Penix, who went 3-6 as a starter. If he's healthy, ready to go week 1, he is your starting quarterback. You took him with the 8th overall pick in the 2024 draft, but you have to be willing to pull that leash quickly if he's not holding up to your expectations at the start of the year, and then you bring in a veteran quarterback who can get Drake London the ball. Pumat here mentions for the New York Giants that they're going to draft Jordan Tyson and Avion Terrell, and they're going to sign Marlon Humphrey and Odell Beckham Jr. Yeah, I guess that'd be a fun full circle for Odell Beckham, who did not play a single snap for any team in 2025. He last played with the Miami Dolphins in 2024. That's his like Shaq Boston Celtic thing. I don't think we're ever going to see Odell Beckham in the league again, which is unfortunate. He's 33 years old now. The Giants might lose Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency, but I agree with you, Matt. I think they could definitely look at Jordan Tyson or Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon with the 5th overall pick in this year's draft. I think it would be wise for the Giants to continue to protect Jackson Dart, though. I wouldn't hate them drafting Francis Maianoa and Spencer Fano if they really believe one of those guys can be another franchise tackle opposite side of Andrew Thomas. Avion Terrell, I've been reading that he could actually fall to the second round as well. The Giants do have the 37th overall pick, and maybe Colton Hood ends up going ahead of him and Brendan Cisse. So that would be huge for the Giants secondary, which definitely needs another guy out there with Paulson Adebo and Drew Phillips. Marlon Humphrey, though, does make a ton of sense just because he would reunite with John Harbaugh. A lot of people are thinking that Eric DeCosta could trade or cut Marlon Humphrey this offseason, given his age. They get younger there. They have Nate Wiggins. They have Malachi Starks and obviously Kyle Hamilton in that secondary already. So I think if Marlon Humphrey actually got cut, it could definitely be a New York Giant. Maybe the Giants, instead of maybe drafting somebody at pick 37, they're trading a second and maybe something else for Trent McDuffie, who could be on the block this offseason. I expect the Giants to add at receiver, corner, and I hope an offensive lineman or two. Just to make sure Jackson Dart is safe and healthy in 2026. Lower mentions here for the Jacksonville Jaguars that they're going to trade up for Caleb Banks or Lee Hunter in the NFL draft. So we know that the Jacksonville Jaguars do not own a first round pick this year because they traded up for Travis Hunter last year. They have the 56th overall pick right now. And I think they could definitely look to beef up that defensive line. You obviously have studs like Trayvon Walker and Joshua Hines-Allen on the edge. They have Arik Armstead, they have Devon Hamilton, and some of those guys, Austin Johnson, Matt Dickerson. I don't know about super long-term pieces. Caleb Banks, keeping him in the state of Florida would be amazing, but they would definitely have to trade up at least 20 or so spots to get Caleb Banks. I think he could be off the board by the Cowboys at number 20. Who knows? Maybe the Minnesota Vikings really like him at 18. I think it's a little unrealistic that they end up getting somebody like Caleb Banks. Lee Hunter could make a little bit more sense. I think he's going to be a round 2 pick out of Texas Tech. Now, who knows how this 2026 draft is going to look? And then we ended up seeing a bunch of interior defensive linemen in the first round last year. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, obviously there in the top 10, Derek Harmon and Walter Nolan. Lee Hunter could definitely be a first round pick, but I think he's a little bit more realistic for Jacksonville than Caleb Banks. I didn't get anything here for the Jets, which I thought was surprising because the Jets have a ton of cap space and a ton of draft capital this offseason. I don't know if this is really this isn't a hot take or a bold prediction or anything. I think they end up with Arvell Reese at number 2. I think they're going to have conversations about Ruben Bain. I think they're going to have conversations about David Bailey. I think they're going to have conversations about trading down, but I think they view Arvell Reese as this chess piece where they could put him all over the field. They can honestly line him up at edge. I know he's not totally used to that, but I do think it will translate at the NFL level. He's going to be an elite run stopper right away. Darren Muji in this front office wants freak athletes, and he's one of the few freak athletes in this class. Yes, Ruben Bain and David Bailey make a ton of sense as well, but that's my prediction for the Jets this offseason. They draft Arvell Reese at number 2. Delusional Lions fan mentions here that the Lions are going to restructure Jared Goff's contract and Kirby Joseph. Then they're going to get Cade Otton or David Njoku, and the Lions win the North next season. Now, I could totally see the Lions winning the North next season. They went 9-8 with a fairly tough schedule. They've had some injuries this year, and I think they can go worse the first. They were still a good enough team to go 9-8 when it felt like the sky was falling after losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and just having an underwhelming offense at the start of the year. And Dan Campbell takes over plays. They didn't convert a lot on 4th down. If they can restructure and free up some money, that could be huge for them because they're projected to have around negative $8 million in cap space. I guess you could run out 12 personnel. Dan Campbell has done it in the past. Hey, even offensive lineman Dan Skipper has done it at times. So maybe you can go after David Njoku, but you have Sam Laporta. Maybe you're worried about his health a little bit. I feel like the Lions, though, need to add in the trenches. Offensive line and defensive line. That should be their main priority this offseason. J8 mentions here that the Packers get a new CB1 this offseason, which I think is 100% another possibility for Green Bay. Last year, they had a lot of different names out there. Isaiah McDuffie, Nate Hobbs, who they signed in free agency, Keyshawn Nixon, Javon Bullard, and Carrington Valentine. I think they're looking for that one-on-one guy out there, that 2 CB1. I think they find CB2s and CB3s, but you want that guy that can go one-on-one. There's not going to be amazing options in free agency. Maybe they are a team that goes after Jamel Dean in free agency. Maybe they take a flyer on a Greg Newsome or somebody that has a little bit more higher upside in 2026. Josh Jobe, Reek Woolen. They could also be a Trent McDuffie trade team. I don't know if we're going to see their front office operate in that fashion, as they maybe made their big time splash last year in trading for Micah Parsons. So maybe this is a team that ends up drafting a corner. But unfortunately for them, they do not have their first round pick from the Micah Parsons trade. So they will have a second round pick at number 52. Maybe that's a Malik Muhammad who's still on the board. Maybe that's somebody like a Keontae Scott from Miami. But you're asking a lot out of those guys to potentially be your CB1. Maybe one day. Right away, though, that might be wishful thinking, so they might have to hit the trade market. The Packers also don't have an insane amount of cap space. It's at like negative $1 million. They could free up a little bit more, so they might have to make another trade. This person mentions here for the Carolina Panthers that they trade back possibly with the Texans, and they could take Ione from Penn State, and they would take CJ Allen, would like to get a Kyle Pitts or David Njoku in free agency as well. Now, I would love this for the Carolina Panthers. I think getting somebody like CJ Allen on their defense would be huge. The Panthers right now have the 19th overall pick, or we can kind of go reverse of what this guy said. They could trade up for Sonny Styles if he maybe falls to like the Ravens at 14 or the Rams at 13. I would love that a lot. I would also love Kyle Pitts or David Njoku to Carolina for Bryce Young just to give him another weapon. I've mocked Kenyon Sadiq a ton to the Carolina Panthers at 19. Not sure if they would go with like a wide receiver target in round one in back-to-back years with Sadiq this year and obviously Ted McMillan last year. I think they do need to add to the front seven and maybe even another secondary as well. I think they're in a nice spot right now with the offensive line. I think Chuba Hubbard's going to have a bounce back year next season. I love Ted McMillan. I like Jalen Coker. So I think they might want to add somebody on the defensive side of the field. Yeah, maybe use some cap space before you pay Bryce Young on a tight end. Kyle Pitts would be sick. And then you can go out and draft somebody like a CJ Allen. Maybe it's another edge rusher for Nick Gordon there as well. Maybe they're a team that ends up taking a TJ Parker or Cassius Howell. Colby mentions here for the New England Patriots that they are actually going to be the ones that sign Kyle Pitts to help Drake May out. Now, it's kind of hilarious that the Patriots and the Seahawks both have a ton of cap space after making it to the Super Bowl. It makes a little bit more sense for the Patriots since they had a lot of cap space last offseason, but they have a rookie quarterback in Drake May. And yes, I totally agree with Colby here. They do need to get somebody, I think, with a little bit more upside and versatility as an offensive weapon than Hunter Henry. And look no further than Kyle Pitts. Could Mike Vrabel and Elliott Wolf convince Kyle Pitts to sign with the Pats? I have no idea if the Falcons are going to just end up tagging him this offseason, but Pitts should be at the top of the priority. It's a good tight end free agency market. Pitts, Njoku, Isaiah Likely, definitely some game changers at the tight end position and some upgrades for the New England Patriots. They have around $40 million in cap space. They have Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, Keyshawn Boutte, Kyle Williams. Like, it's a fine wide receiver room. Wouldn't mind them adding there. Maybe they try to sign a free agent or two this offseason on that interior offensive line, but I would give Kyle Pitts to the Patriots 2 thumbs up. Nobody gave me anything about the Las Vegas Raiders this offseason, so this might be a hot take. I don't think they trade away Max Crosby. I got a lot of comments of you guys mentioning your favorite team trading for Max Crosby. Maybe he's going to go to the Cowboys. Maybe he's going to go to the Lions or the Ravens. I don't think they move him. I think John Spytek wants this team to improve next year, and I think they want to be at least in that wild card contention. And I think he wants the defense to keep them in games for Fernando Mendoza and that offense under Clint Kubiak, the new head coach. I'm assuming they're going to take Fernando Mendoza with the #1 overall pick. So I think they keep Max Crosby. I don't know if they would love any of the trade returns. It was rumored that the Seahawks offered their first round pick last year for Max Crosby, and it was like Gray Zabel. It might have been like a second or a third rounder in that deal as well. I wonder if they would find something like that with Crosby getting older a little bit. He hasn't really played in the playoffs, and he's a very expensive contract. So my prediction for the Raiders, they don't move Max Crosby, their best player in the offseason. Andrew mentions here for the Rams that they trade their 29th pick and a third rounder for Trent McDuffie. It's hilarious too, because I think Rams fans and Chiefs fans want the same thing. The Chiefs fans want another first round pick in this draft, and the Rams want Trent McDuffie for their 29th overall pick. So I think we could agree on that. Trent McDuffie for 29. Maybe they'll disagree on what else they would want. Maybe Chiefs fans would want a second rounder from the Los Angeles Rams, who are picking at number 61 in the second round. And maybe the Rams would rather give up a third rounder or something like that because they got to pay Trent McDuffie. But the Rams have a lot of cap space, $48 million. They're going to get off of like the Devontae Adams contract next year. They could trade for Trent McDuffie, and he's not going to overlap too long with maybe like a Jared Verse extension or a Braden Fisk extension whenever those guys end up getting paid. The Rams desperately need another corner. Like, they struggled a lot against the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears and the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs. And Trent McDuffie, who's been in the Super Bowl before, would be a massive upgrade. Crystal mentions here for the Baltimore Ravens that they're going to draft an edge rusher in the first round, trade for A.J. Brown, and re-sign Tyler Linderbaum. As much as I would like to see Lamar Jackson with A.J. Brown, who would be by far the best receiver he's ever had in his career, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the odds are too high that A.J. Brown gets traded, and if he does get traded, I don't think it's going to be to Baltimore. I do think they are going to re-sign Tyler Linderbaum at the end of the day. They have about $22 million in cap space. They want to keep the guy there. He's obviously their best offensive lineman, or at least their most consistent offensive lineman, even though a tackle spot like Ronnie Staley could be a little bit more valuable. And then I also think the Ravens could draft an edge rusher in the first round with Kyle Van Noy getting up there in age. They're going to get Namadi Madubuike back next year, which is very exciting. So maybe they're a team that selects Keldrick Falk at number 14. Maybe they also look at somebody like a Cassius Howell as well. I think one of those two guys could 100% be in play for Baltimore. It would be hilarious if they ended up with Trey Hendrickson this offseason and he swaps teams within the division. Nothing here for the Saints as well this offseason, which I think they are going to maybe be able to get some type of draft capital for Derek Carr. It might be a 7th round pick, but it looks like he's coming back as well. And the Saints have the 8th overall pick. I would love for them to take Jeremiah Love there at number 8, because I don't know how much longer Alvin Kamara can be the #1 running back for this team. And they do have an offensive line infrastructure to make Jeremiah Love succeed. So I think at number 8, they're either taking Jeremiah Love or a big-time wide receiver. There's a chance Tate and or Tyson off the board. I think Mekhi Lemon has a really good chance at being on the board for the Saints at 8. Pairing up Cardinal Tate, one Ohio State receiver with another one on Olave would be sick. I think Jordan Tyson would be sick as well. Maybe they go after Kenyon Sadiq at number 8. That's a little high, and I do think that they're fine with Juwan Johnson next year. So I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love at 8 or one of the receivers. MLB Prods mentions here that the Seattle Seahawks gave JSN, Devon Witherspoon market resetting contracts and pay Kenneth Walker. So yeah, the Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker, is a free agent. Now I think at the worst, he's going to get tagged from the Seattle Seahawks. No way they're letting him walk. So I do think they're going to find some type of deal for Kenneth Walker. When you're looking at the highest paid running backs next year, it's Saquon, CMC, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and then Alvin Kamara is making around $12 million. Same with like Josh Jacobs, and that's what James Cook got. So I think that's going to be in the range of what Kenneth Walker gets. Maybe he gets that $14 million that Jonathan Taylor got, but I do think he's going to get in that range and a deal will be done. And then we're also going to see some insane contracts for JSN and for Devon Witherspoon. JSN could get $40 million a year. He could get $40.3 million a year, $50K more than Jamar Chase, and become the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think Devon Witherspoon is the best corner in the NFL. I think he's one of the best corners, but I do think when you're hitting free agency at this time, after winning the Super Bowl, you are going to get an insane contract. So there's a chance he gets $30.2 million from the Seattle Seahawks, about $100K more than what Sauce Gardner is getting from the Colts. So I agree. I think Kenneth Walker is going to be back. I think JSN and Devon Witherspoon are going to get some insane contracts. And the Seattle Seahawks, a team that has $72 million in cap space, it's going to be mostly internal because there's going to have to be another Sam Darnold extension in a year from now. Pittsburgh Prods mentions here that the Pittsburgh Steelers will trade Alex Highsmith for a second-round pick. And as a Steelers fan, I hope they do this. I hope they trade away Alex Highsmith and maybe play Nick Herbig a little bit more next year, as he's going to be in a contract year as well. Alex Highsmith was banged up a ton in the 2025 season. He played 13 games. He played 11 games in 2024. He had 14 and a half sacks for the Steelers back in 2022. He's under a decent contract. He signed a 4-year, $68 million deal, which honestly might be below a market value edge rusher of his caliber. 29 years old, 2 years left. I'm not sure if a second-round pick is wishful thinking. It could end up being a third-rounder, but could some teams that miss out on Trey Hendrickson or a Boye Mafe or somebody like that in free agency look at Alex Highsmith? It's definitely a possibility. I'm not sure if the Chiefs, they can't really afford Alex Highsmith. I don't know if the Saints in the second round are really ready for that either. The Philadelphia Eagles at 54, keep them in the state of Pennsylvania. They're definitely going to need an edge rusher this offseason. The Chargers at 55 could also look for Alex Highsmith as well. The Bears at 57 could look for Alex Highsmith while they have Caleb Williams under a rookie contract. There's definitely some teams in the late second round that could look at Highsmith. But like I said, it could be wishful thinking, and they might only be able to get a third. Quinn mentions here for the Houston Texans that they're going to take Caden Proctor and Connor Lew in the draft, and their line is somewhat better, and CJ Stroud plays better in a contract year because all players do better in contract years. Now, the Texans' offensive line was not amazing last year, but it was definitely a step in the right direction from 2024. And throughout the regular season, CJ Stroud wasn't great, but it's not like he was horrible. But then on the national stage in the playoffs against the Steelers and against the Patriots, he really did struggle. I think they found something in Arian Ursary long-term. They obviously have Titus Howard, who's going to be there long-term as well. So maybe they're going to try to improve that interior going forward. And that's where Connor Lew can come in. The Texans own their first rounder and they own their second rounder. So at pick 28, could they be a Caleb Williams team? Could they end up being somebody that selects Caleb Proctor in that range? I agree with Quinn. And then in the second round at 59, I would like Connor Lew if he's on the board. Maybe they also look at somebody else there, but I also think that they could look at a running back, and maybe that's where you look at Jadarian Price, whoever you like more, Allen or Singleton from Penn State. Maybe we see the second running back go off the board from the Texans at 59, because we can't do Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, and whatever's going on with Joe Mixon again. DB mentions here for the Tennessee Titans that they're going to sign Breece Hall and Jawan Jennings this offseason. I like the Jawan Jennings shout. I could definitely see that happening. Reunite him with Robert Saleh, who's now the head coach in Tennessee. Breece Hall would be great, and I think the Titans definitely need a running back playmaker upgrade over a Tony Pollard or a Tajay Spears. It's just the Jets might either re-sign Breece Hall or tag him this offseason. Could they poach Travis Etienne from their division rival Jacksonville Jaguars? Either way, they need playmakers for Cam Ward. Honestly, I don't just want Jawan Jennings. I also want a Kyle Pitts, a David Njoku. I want an Alec Pierce, a Wanda Robinson. I need at least 2 receivers to join Chimere Dike and Alec Ironmaner in Tennessee next year. And then lastly here, Nathan mentions for the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins has a reunion with Minnesota, and Justin Jefferson demands a trade at the end of next season after missing the playoffs again. So I don't know if that's all going to happen. That's in a year from now, but I do think there's a really good chance Kirk Cousins reunites with Kevin O'Connell this offseason. They obviously can't roll into the 2026 season with J.J. McCarthy as their unanimous consensus quarterback one in week one. They need to have him with some competition out there. And if J.J. McCarthy still starts week one, they need to have a better backup plan in place than a Carson Wentz or a Max Brosmer from last year. And Kirk Cousins had maybe the best years of his career with the Minnesota Vikings from years 2018 to 2023. He tears Achilles that year, then he leaves for Atlanta in free agency. He's going to be 38 years old next season. It's pretty old, but I still think he could be a good enough quarterback in Kevin O'Connell's system. So I think this is going to happen, and I agree with Nathaniel. So that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy one prediction for every single NFL team this offseason. If you like this video, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed because you could be featured in the next one of these, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.